We have Giancarlo Casale here with us. Giancarlo, come join us. Please take a seat.
Good morning, Professor Casale. Please.
On the other side.
On this side, please.
Now we are having one of the directors of the EUI departments, the Department of History, and he will be also joining us for the breakout room sessions. But now that we have him here, we can ask a couple of questions. How are you, Giancarlo? Have you been enjoying the event so far?
Absolutely. We just had our session for the history department. It was a little bit of a different experimental format. It was a quiz.
Okay.
Audience participation was key, and we had a packed room, standing room only.
Man.
So I think it was a success, yes.
Everybody was super passionate about history.
Oh, well, that's one of the last things that we discussed, is there's an advantage and a weakness of our discipline is that people are really interested in it outside of academia as just a source of entertainment, and we're expected also to be able to speak to the general public in terms that they can relate to easily. At the same time, we have an expectation in academia to be able to make policy-informed contributions, and so that's something that a lot of other disciplines don't really need to do. No one is expecting demographers or economists to be, entertaining in the same way that historians sometimes are.
Do you think we need to add like a performance type of training in PhDs?
A quiz or throwing microphones at each other.
I think it's absolutely useful, especially with teaching. Teaching is also about engaging. It's also about a performance. One of the nicest compliments that anybody ever gave me after I gave a lecture is they came up to me and they said, you don't seem to me to be a history professor. You seem to me to be an actor who's playing the role of a history professor. And I think that is exactly the way it should be, because there's a performative part of delivering material and controlling people's emotions and sense of timing, sense of suspense, part of the storytelling element. It's very much about theater.
Giancarlo, there's a question that I always have that I ask actually to the historians that come to Radio Cavolo in my program, which is, I'm always curious about how you guys frame your research questions, which are so broad. And for other disciplines, this is so different. So how do you go about when a PhD researcher comes to you with a huge question? Mm-hmm. Does that also happen in history? How do you guide that process?
Right. So the thing that I think is different about the method is that historians have to have sources to work with. We have a big narrative in our head that is basically the way people explain some particular topic. And the way that you engage with that is by finding new sources of information that force you to test whether the narrative that you have available fits the material or not. So the way that you control the scope of the project is by forcing the researcher to actually go to the archives, identify sources, take stock of what there is, and see to what extent it surprises them. Because that is really what historical research is about. It's about finding sources that are surprising because they're telling us something that is not exactly corresponding with what we thought we already knew.
So going back to what happened inside the room, you mentioned the quiz, you mentioned also the audience reaction and this difficulty of having the pulse of the situation. What was the general idea that came out from your participants in this session? Do people agree that we're back to the world of empires and power politics, or did you get some other conclusions, or was there a different energy in the room?
Well, so we did several different things, but for example, Professor Molon-Drouol, who's a historian of the European integration project, shared with us, part of the quiz was he shared with us some quotations, and we had to guess when the quotation was said.
Right.
And these are quotations that you would think were taken from the news this week. Things like, Europe has to understand that security and economic prosperity are two sides of the same coin. That was actually said in 1981. It was not said last week. And so that's, I think, one of the really key points is that sometimes things that seem like problems of the moment, that are emergencies, that force you to search for an emergency solution rather than thinking about things methodically.
Right.
Once you realize that it's not a new problem, it's just a new manifestation of an old problem, that can really help you to think about things in a way that helps you to find long-term solutions. If it's a long-term problem, it requires a long-term solution, and this is really key.
Indeed, no, that's exactly important. And I have one final forward-looking question. Obviously, you're here as a speaker, as a moderator, as a UI professor, but also as a participant. Is there anything that you personally would like to get out from this event today in the panel sessions that you may be following later, or in your interactions with other types of speakers? Is there any personal objective or personal goal that you would like to see from such an event and such a day as this one? Please.
So I think following up from the event yesterday,
Yep.
Which I really enjoyed. I especially enjoyed the speeches from our two Sindake,
Yep.
the mayor of Florence
And the mayor of
Fiesole, and really doing a great job talking about the connection between the mission of the European Union,
Right.
the mission of the EUI, and the ways in which the EUI can really be useful for European leaders to be able to think about problems in different ways. I think that it's exciting for us as historians to be able to be here and to be included in these discussions. And there's a lot of interdisciplinary panels where people from the different departments are doing things together. And this is something that I think we don't get enough of a chance to do during the normal year. And it's one of the highlights for me of the remaining day.
Indeed, it is something we heard already from several speakers that we have over the course of the morning session, this idea of making research evident, making it relevant, making it visible outside, which is also super important, and ideally events such as this one will hopefully serve this purpose. So thank you very much, Professor Casale. It was a pleasure having you here.
You can stay, Giancarlo, because
If you wish to stay.
you can stay to keep having a conversation with us, because now we're going to have more of your colleagues.
Oh, okay, all right. So it's a panel.
It's a panel.
All right.
It's becoming a panel. All of a
Okay.
sudden.
Because we were discussing about the ways of that we can also extend the outreach of the EUI, team up with different organizations, and I think that it's actually a good moment to bring our new guest in. So welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself to our viewers here of this live streaming?
Thank you for having me. My name is Silvana Sciarra. I was a professor of European Labour and Social Law here at the Institute. Then I went back to the University of Florence. And then I went to the Constitutional Court. And I was there for 9 years. And I chaired the court for about a year or so. And here I am, very happy to be back and very grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. So we all go back to the previous memories about the UI. How would you see that the UI has changed in terms of the academy over the course of all the time that you have observed activities here at the UI? Is there any major changes that you see from nowadays an outsider, but always a close guest?
Well, of course now the EUI is a wider community than it was in my years, and this is all for the better, of course. And I'm sure the cultural exchanges have become even more challenging and fruitful than they were in my years. What I value very much from my own experience is the intergenerational research that we carried on. In other words, projects were shared, professors and researchers together. We published together, we had seminars together. I can never forget that experience is very enriching, and I've kept it in my subsequent work. Even at the Constitutional Court, I did the same. I had younger people working with me, and with some of them I published together. We published together. So it's been a great opportunity for me to learn as a professor, which is something all professors should do at times, don't you think?
It's a never-ending job, I see.
A never-ending job, and as I heard this morning in the first very interesting session, keep our egos under control.
Oh.
Keep them under control. That's what I tell myself all the time.
What do you think the EUI should be doing in the next 50 years to remember?
Well, 50 years is a very long time, so yeah, it's hard. It's hard for me to say that, but I can tell you one of the things that we discussed this morning for my discipline is that there's a lot of talk about universities becoming irrelevant because of generative AI, for example. But as a historian, one of the things that we do is we actually force people to confront the difference between their expectations and evidence. And one of the things that generative AI is very bad at is telling you things that you don't already know. It's actually trained to tell you what people already believe. And so it is even more necessary for people to do the kind of research that we do in a world in which the default is to ask ChatGPT what happened, rather than to have somebody go and find that what we think happened isn't actually what the evidence is telling us.
I think that's a very good point. I share what you said. The other point is that, for example, climate change sets very long ending targets for scholars. And the sciences offer to lawyers, for example, new challenges, because we have to listen, we have to learn how to listen to science, take those numbers into account, those terrible deadlines, terrible because they show us a dramatic future, take them into account and act as lawyers consequently. So I very much trust long-lasting projects, which universities can do and should do. That's one point. The other thing is communication. I think communication is crucial for academic institutions, as it is for other institutions. I learned it, for example, at the Constitutional Court, how important it is to offer to the general public in clear and simple words what an institution does. It's an action in transparency, and it's fruitful to citizens. And I think academic institutions really should be doing that more. The EUI does it very well, of course, but there is a way to improve it and to reach new targets. Even simple people who do not belong to the academic circles, those need to be reached, I think.
I would say especially because academics sometimes are a bit of a closed group.
Exactly, that's what I meant.
Actually, this is one of the points that also Judge O'Leary, which we had the pleasure of having here with us just a few moments ago, said in our small interview after her plenary. So perhaps going back to the same question that we asked Judge O'Leary, I would like to hear both of your perspectives on academic freedom, because the first plenary session was actually on academic freedom, and we discussed about the fact that at the beginning it was mostly a way to shield yourself from political influence, but then it has changed majorly and lately with the inclusion of social media, of grassroots groups that bring in some ideas, which may be some correct and some rightfully wrong. Academic freedom has changed also in the terms of nature. So I would like to hear first from Professor Shara regarding your experience as a legal scholar, so we can also compare your answer with that of Judge O'Leary, and then from Professor Cavolo with his historian perspective.
I enjoyed the first session very much, and I share most of the things that have been said. I found it was a session with a lot of equilibrium in it. And I come from a very divisive academic discipline because I am a labor lawyer, and in Italy labor law can be a very divisive academic subject. And I learned from my mentor, and I try to do it myself in teaching, that students should always be offered at least two points of view, if there are two opposite points of view. In my field, it's the employer's view, the employee's view, and maybe third party's view. So they have to be presented with an open scenario, not with one precise, clear-cut point of view, which is the point of view of the one who is teaching. And I think this is great. And this is the great lesson that we have to learn as professors. But then this morning we heard something which is more, how can I say, threatening for academic university or academic institutions, because we understood how academic freedom can be limited by political power, and that's something that needs to be resisted. And I think courts are important, and we have witnessed the centrality of courts, and I am all in favor of activist courts. In other words, I don't find the adjective activist a negative adjective, but a good one, because when A right is there to be defended. The court must intervene, and freedom of expression and freedom of teaching is crucial in democracy all the time, now more than ever.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the fact that students should have contrasting views so that they can pick which one is their own thinking, but also be able to discern which are the right sources or the wrong sources. And we cannot but talk with sources with a historian. So, Professor Casale.
Yeah, so this is obviously a very difficult question that we're wrestling with. And I can say this will be a predictable thing for me to say, but it isn't a new problem. It is the case that every time there's been a big technological change in the way that people communicate, there has been a big argument about freedom of speech, and I absolutely agree that it is also a legal question every time. When the printing press was invented, when newspapers were invented, when radio and television were introduced, every time there's a big change in the way people are informed and communicate with each other, the standards, the expectations become disrupted, and you have to change the rules. And I think that's what we are in right now, is a moment in which the rules have not caught up with the practices. It isn't only even about rules, it's also about what people's sense of propriety, people's sense of what is honorable, what is shameful. Those also are outdated now. So we have people behaving in ways that nobody really knows how to judge. But we will actually figure out ways to come to terms with new modes of communication, and part of that has to do with activists, lawyers, and judges. Part of it has to do with really taking the time to think what it is that we need. What are the shortcomings of the ways that we have of interacting with each other, and what do we need to decide collectively to be able to communicate better?
Well, thank you very much to both. Now we're going to do a bit of a reshift of the panel. So
we will have to reshuffle, but thank you so much, Professor Casale. Thank you very much, Professor Shara. It was a pleasure having you here both. Enjoy the rest of the day here.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye. Thank you.